SDM.
This will be recorded on Hare Krishna Live. Anything else you need to do?
Working? It's not connected. Just try this. If it works. Can you get this closer so that the camera can contain both?
You just want the whole thing to be.
Sorry? Can you get this closer so that this will contain both? No. You can move that behind and get this closer. Or you can move that backward. Can you get both? Okay, fair. Jayom Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parivrajikacharya Ashtotar Shri Śrīmad His Divine Grace Abhay Charanarvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Śrīla Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 16, Text 20. So till the verse comes, I'll read the word for translation. Pituhu of his father. This is 9, 16, 20. Kayena with the body. Sandhaya joining. Shiraha, the head. Adaya, keeping. Barhishi, upon kusha grass. Sarvadevamayam, the all-pervading personality of Godhead. The master of all the demigods. Devam, Lord Vasudev. Atmanam, who is present everywhere as the super soul. Ayajat, he worshipped. Makhai, by offering sacrifices. So, how many of you have this in your phone or somewhere, the verse? Okay, a few of you have got it. So it is 9, 16, 20. पितुः कायेन संधाय शिर आदाय बर्हिषि सर्वदेवमयं देवम् आत्मानाम् अयजन्मखै पितुः कायेन संधाय शिर आदाय बर्हिषि सर्वदेवमयं देवम् आत्मानम् अयजन्मखै पितुः कायेन संधाय शिर आदाय बर्हिषि सर्वदेवमयं देवम् आत्मानम् अयजन्मखै. Would anyone like to recite? Sorry, पितुः कायेन संधाय शिर आदाय बर्हिषि सर्वदेवमयं देवम् आत्मानाम् अयजन्मखै पितुः कायेन संधाय देवमयं देवम् आत्मानाम् अयजन्मखै पितुः कायेन संधाय Let's try this. This is directly here. Type C to HDMI. So, keep it on me. Okay. Translation and purport. Therefore, Parshuram joined his father's head to the dead body and placed the whole body and head upon kusha grass. By offering sacrifices, he began to worship Lord Vasudeva, who is the all-pervading super soul of all the demigods and of every living entity. Sorry about this. So, can we try this? That one I can project wirelessly also. Is it turning on? Would anyone else, can anyone read the translation in the purport till then? If you have the phone. Just next verse, because we don't have purport for this one.
After completing the sacrifice, Lord Parshurama gave the eastern direction.
Just press it properly.
The south of Brahma, the west of Advaryu, the north to the Purgata, and on the four corners, northeast, southeast, northwest, and southwest. To the other priest, he gave the middle to Kashyapa and the place known as Aryavrata to the Upadrasa. Whatever remained, he distributed among the Sadhyasas, the associate priests. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. The tract of land in India between the Himalayan mountains and the Vindhya hills is called Aryavrata.
So sorry for the technical issues. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhaktivedanta Swami iti namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. My dear Lord, please guide us all so that we can understand your words and be drawn in love towards you through those words. Hare Krishna. I'm grateful to be here with all of you today. And today morning, I'm just trying this. Sorry, 1 minute. Is this working? Is my phone, if it works, that's also okay. HDMI 2 has come now. Okay, good. Let's try with this. Okay, not this way. Okay. That's okay. I think it's set up now. Let's go ahead with this for the time being. So today we are discussing from the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, and generally when I take classes on the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, if I try to use this framework called Chit. Chit is basically that we look at three things when we try to understand the Bhagavatam, a particular verse. We look at the context, what is going on over here. Then we look at the implication, what does it mean? And then finally, we look at the takeaway for us. So, those 3 points I'll try to discuss today. So today I'll focus more on the context. Tomorrow, since we'll continue the same verse, the context I'll not focus so much because the same context it will be. So broadly speaking, when we look at the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, the Bhagavatam has how many cantos? 12 cantos. How many chapters? Anyone knows? 335 chapters. Okay. Can this be tilted slightly upwards? Or it's not possible? Okay. Today. Okay, it's visible. Fair enough. No problem. That's okay. No need to worry. So 335 chapters are there. And among this, the canto that is the largest, which is almost 1/3 of the Bhagavatams, in terms of number of verses as well as number of chapters, is the 10th canto. That has 90 chapters. And right now, we are in the canto before the 10th canto. And overall, if you see, each canto of the Bhagavatam has fascinating stories, sometimes bewildering stories, or rather, stories of how people get bewildered. And seeing how they get bewildered, we can get bewildered sometimes. Bharat Maharaj renounces the whole world, and then he gets attached to a deer. So, it's bewildering how he found that a deer to be bewildering, isn't it? So, there are bewildering stories. But in one sense, it's like we in human life are in the material world, but those who are seeking spiritual growth, they are, in one sense, trying to look upwards, trying to look towards the spiritual world. So the 9th canto, in one sense, gives us a hard look at the brutal reality of the material world, so that we can firmly turn away from it towards the spiritual world. Like suppose we have to leave something, maybe, but a part of us wants to stay, a part of us wants to leave. So there is a bit of anxiety, a little lingering longing is there. Maybe I should be there. Like we're leaving, but you look back, you're looking back. So, the Bhagavatam in the 9th canto, what it does is, it gives us a very vivid picture of how the material world is, so that we can just say, this is not where I want to be. And then we can turn firmly toward the spiritual world. In 2.44 in the Gita, Krishna says that as long as we have a desire, oh, this world can make me happy, bhoga ishware pasaktana, taya apaharita chetas. As long as our consciousness is caught in that, we cannot turn towards Krishna wholeheartedly. We can turn, but not wholeheartedly. That samadhau na vidhiyate, that firmness does not come. The same principle applies over here. That Bhagavatam wants to give us that firmness, and that's why there are a number of stories in the 10th canto which seem to be quite provocative. See, basically, in the path of the material world, there are two things. There are tribulations, there are troubles and tribulations and distresses that befall us while we are going a life journey. And there are temptations that can take us away from the world. So while we are going on a path, sometimes on the path there is so much trouble, we feel, should I stick to this path? Or sometimes when we are on the path, we see, hey, there's something so much wonderful over here. Maybe I should just go here. So in general, temptations and tribulations are the two things that can distract a person from the spiritual path. So in the Bhagavatam, in the 9th canto especially, both of these are depicted. So for example, there's the story of Shaubari Muni. Now, this depicts how, is it about temptation? Is it about tribulation? Yes, it is about temptation. So it falls over here. Of course, you can say when temptation leads to tribulation, that is there. From temptation also problems come up. But Shaubari Muni's story is the story of temptation. That a small perception can actually agitate the mind and the person can get distracted. So similarly, there's also the story of another sage who gets agitated. Who is that? Or other person who gets tempted and distracted and entangled? Sorry? Vishwamitra, yes. There's Vishwamitra is there, then there is Yayati is there. Those stories will come. So there are many stories over here where a person can get distracted, that is described. Now, there is also the part of tribulation. Tribulation means for no reason some danger comes and the danger goes to the level of disaster in somebody's life. And now that is what happened to Parshuram and his father. Who is his father? Jamadagni, yes. So now, in many ways, the Bhagavatam has many different stories, but at one level, it's all focused on helping Parikshit Maharaj focus on Krishna. So many of these stories, if we see in that light, see, the Puranas have many different stories, the Vedas have different stories. Why does Shukadeva Goswami select particular stories to emphasize? So in general, one consistent theme in the Bhagavatam is about how life is unfair. That for everyone in life, we feel that we get a raw deal. And Parikshit Maharaj himself gets a terrible deal. A small mistake. And what happens? He's cursed to die. A small oversight, and that was also largely circumstantial. Now, if we just, sometimes somebody speaks rudely to us, we might conclude that is a rude person. But if we come to know that maybe they had lost someone in their family and that's why they were upset, then okay, we understand, cut them some, give them some space, cut them some leash. Don't be so hard on them. So now Parikshit Maharaj was hungry. He was hungry and thirsty. And that time he did like that. So it was an error, but generally whenever there is an error, somebody does something wrong, either we can attribute it to their character or we can attribute it to their circumstance. So generally, if we like someone, we attribute their error to their circumstance. If we dislike someone, we attribute it to their character. If somebody we like eats way too much food and everybody has less food, we'll say that, probably they did not know the food was limited. They probably were too hungry. If we don't like that person, what a glutton. No sense control. Isn't it? So now, what happens for Parikshit Maharaj? He has to face a situation where he is actually in trouble. He is hungry, he is thirsty, and that's time he does something. So it's not his character at all. It's largely because of the circumstance. Now we can say that no circumstance should provoke us, and no circumstance should make us give up our principle. That's true, but still we are all human beings, we are finite, we are fallible, and sometimes circumstances do get to us. We all have our moments of weakness. But for him, what happens? See, when something happened largely because of circumstance, and that is attributed to our character, it becomes very painful. And now, this is often called as an attribution error, or it is even attribution bias. If I don't like someone, then I will always go for the worst explanation for their behavior. And this is what Shringi does. And he says, the power has got to his head. Therefore, I will destroy him. Now, a similar dynamic, not exactly the same, but a similar dynamic keeps coming in the Bhagavatam. That here, what has happened? There is again a Kshatriya and there is a Brahmana. And Parikshit Maharaj is depicting, or he's being told over here, how the Brahmana is Jamadagni. And the Kshatriya is who? In this case, it is Kartavir Arjuna. And what he does is far more offensive. It is, he actually kills Jamadagni. Now, in those times, to offend a Brahmana itself is very dangerous. To kill a Brahmana is practically unheard of. So, when Parshuram does something, sometimes people say that Parshuram was so disproportionate in his violence. It may seem disproportionate, and it is disproportionate. But I'll come to the Parshuram story shortly after this. But the point is that there are certain actions that are quite symbolic of one's state of mind. See, we all get angry at times. Now, generally, when we are angry, we may yell at our juniors. Generally, often bosses may take it out on their subordinates. Or if we have a bad day in office, we may take it out on our family. If we have a bad day at home, we may take it out on our office. So generally, we may get angry with those who are below us. Now, it's not a good thing, but that's a feature of human nature. But if somebody in their anger starts challenging not just their equals, but their superiors, that means that anger has totally driven them crazy. And so we all have anger, but whenever there is anger, for every one of us, that anger stays within some boundaries. Sometimes people get angry, they may just give the other person the silent treatment. I won't talk with you only. Like small children say, Katti. So the adult version of Katti is that we just give the other person the silent treatment. So then, sometimes we may just talk in grunts. Sometimes we may yell at somebody. Sometimes some people get angry, they start using swear words. They start speaking obscenities. Some people may raise their fists. Somebody might take out a knife. Somebody might take out a gun. If the American president or the Russian president, they get angry, they can nuke an entire country also. Isn't it? So now, our anger, it has boundaries. Now, in any kind of cultured society, boundaries are important. And boundaries are one sense of the word dharma. When Krishna says dharma aviruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshama. Kama is desire. Krishna says our desire should not go beyond boundaries. Now, different boundaries may be different for different people. Now some boundaries may simply be of power. I just don't have the power to do anything. So that means somebody gets angry if a small kid gets angry with a bully. And the kid can't do much about the bully. So there's a boundary. Now, if that means there is no power. But then, or no, we can say outer power. No outer power to get back or to express that anger. But sometimes the boundaries are because of no inner power. Like somebody may have the outer power, but they lack the inner power. So then, suppose somebody has a gun. Now, if they start using the gun indiscriminately, that can be deadly. Isn't it? If somebody has power, if somebody has outer power, it's just as important that they should also have inner power to ensure that the outer power is not used indiscriminately. There have been 2 long wars going on in the world right now, and it's horrible the kind of suffering that is there. And we can mock and deride politicians for all this conflict. And there's some validity to that. But at least, to some extent, we can give credit that nobody has used nuclear weapons till now. They could have used. So at least that level of sanity is there. So my point is that when Jamadagni is killed by Kartavir Arjuna, that shows, Kshatriya always has power. But a Kshatriya is meant to has outer power. But a Kshatriya is meant to have inner power by which they can restrain the use of the outer power. The same verse, Dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bhartarshava. In that same sequence comes, Krishna also says, Balam balavatam chaham kama raga vivarjitam. Krishna says, Bala is what, strength is what people have. But every person who has strength is not actually a Kshatriya by character. A person who is Kshatriya by character is a person who has strength and also has the strength to know when to use that strength. So I'm making 2 distinct points over here. One is that when we have anger, we may cross boundaries. And that's not good. Second is that how much boundaries we may cross may depend on how much outer power we may have. It may also depend on the inner power that we have. So, in the context of the Bhagavatam's culture, killing a Brahmana is, in one sense, the ultimate abuse of power. See, generally, anybody who has power, they may want to abuse it. Like say, when the Kauravas tried to disrobe Draupadi, it's a horrendous crime for many reasons. In general, there will always be in human history, there are people who are predatory. And they will prey on those who are powerless. But generally, those who do like this, they will do it privately somewhere. They will do it secretly. But there's no evidence, nobody catches them. That means they at least have fear of the law. But if somebody does a crime publicly, you might have seen something like this in Hindi movies, there's some underworld don, commits crime publicly. And although there are eyewitnesses, nobody is ready to come as the eyewitness. Because that person has no fear of the law. But suppose somebody goes to a police station or a court and commits a crime there. Then it is not only the person does not have fear of the law has fear of them. Now this is a very depraved situation. It's a sarvarthan viparitamsya buddhi sa parthatamasi adharmam dharmamitiya manyate tamasa vrita. Krishna talks about in the Bhagavad Gita that but everything becomes upside down. It becomes not just distorted but perverted. So then Duryodhan's action was so heinous. And similarly, the action of Kartavir Arjuna was so brutal. That abuse of power was not just brutal, it was also brazen. Brutal means what you do is very cruel. Brazen is where what you do is public. So it was brutal and it was brazen. Hmm? So generally, most people, even when they do something bad, they try to cover it up. Or they try to put window dress it so that it doesn't look that bad. But so it was, his abuse of power was brutal and brazen. So in one sense, now I have moved from the context towards the second part, the implication over here. The context, what I'm talking about is before giving a glimpse of the spiritual world, the Bhagavatam is giving us a unvarnished picture of the brutal reality of this world. So for Parikshit Maharaj, something bad happened, that he made a mistake and now he's cursed to die. A story is being told where somebody did something far worse, and to that person something far worse has happened. So quite often for us, when something bad happens to us, one of the things that gets to us is not just that the bad thing had happened. It is we feel as if I am singled out for suffering. And I alone am suffering. When we feel like that, then it becomes very, very difficult to bear. So it's essentially many of the stories that Parikshit Maharaj is being told is, you are not the only person for whom bad things have happened. You are not the only person for him who has been unfairly subjected to suffering. And almost all the stories in the Bhagavatam are largely about kings being subjected to suffering unfairly. Now, Dhruva is a small boy. He's not a king, but he's a prince who is going to become a king. Prahlad is also a prince. Chitraketu is a king. He was on the verge of retirement. Something terrible happens to him over here. So now, that terrible things happening is talked about. But Kartavir Arjuna is what? A king has done a terrible thing. And then the suffering goes not just for the king, not just for his children. Now, Parshuram is ready to end it. Okay, he kills the king. Now, here what is happening is, he restores his father's, he brings his father back to life by mystical powers. And let's end it. But his sons come back again. I won't go into the whole story. You have probably heard the whole story. But the point is, so what Parshuram sees is, the corruption is not just in one individual. The rot is throughout the system. And if the rot is in one person, then you can just neutralize that one person and it's over. But when the rot runs through the system, and the whole system has to be brought down. So one of the things that Parikshit Maharaj prays, it's very significant in the context of, recently I was asked, why is Parshuram so indiscriminate, so disproportionate? Okay, one king did something wrong. Why punish so many dynasties, so many generations for it? So we have to look at it in the context of the Bhagavatam. So when Parikshit Maharaj is cursed, even before Parikshit Maharaj is cursed, actually, he recognizes, I have done something terrible. So sometimes what happens is, when there is regret, after something bad is done, now what is the regret for? That is also very important. It's like, once a person was going way above the speed limit. A cop pulled him over. And the cop asked, didn't you see the speed limit? He said, I saw the speed limit, I just didn't see you. Now, most people won't say that, but that's their attitude. So the idea is that people think that doing wrong is not the problem. Getting caught while doing wrong is the problem. So is the regret for the action, or is the regret because of the consequence of the action? That determines a lot whether the person is likely to reform or not. Do you regretting any kind of regret is good, but regret for the action is much better. So now, if you see Parikshit Maharaj, even before Shamik Rishi sends a messenger telling him that my son has cursed you like this, even before that Parikshit Maharaj expresses his regret. And so, what a terrible thing I did. I have offended a Brahmana. And then he says, therefore, he prays that for this offense, whatever punishment is going to come, let it come to me alone. Let it not come to my family. Let it not come to my kingdom. So, here, in one sense, in this story, how the punishment can extend beyond oneself to one's family, to generations, to dynasties. That is being depicted. So it's like sometimes when we are facing some problems, it could be I did something wrong, somebody did something wrong to me, but the whole situation is a mess. When we are facing a messy situation, we can get completely overwhelmed by that messy situation. But when we hear about some other place where there are far more messy situations, then what happens? We start seeing our problems in perspective. So, in the case of Parikshit Maharaj, what he did was a small mistake. Now, what he got was a disproportionate punishment, undoubtedly. But still, the whole thing is, it's ending with him. But in the case of Kartikeya Arjuna, he did something terrible, his sons did something terrible, and then the punishment that is going to come is going to go for generations upon it. It goes to Kshatriyas all over. So, what Parshuram is seeing is that the rot is in the whole system, and that's why he is deciding the whole system has to be cleansed. But the point is that this principle, so here we are coming to the conclusion of this pastime, and we will discuss the conclusion in tomorrow's session. But in the implication, what this principle, that for all of us, that we all will have lapses, we all will commit mistakes. That's just the nature of life. Sometimes we'll succumb to anger, sometimes we'll succumb to envy, sometimes we'll succumb to greed, we'll sometimes succumb to lust, whatever. We all succumb. But it is that even when we fall, we try to keep it within boundaries. There are certain boundaries that we do not cross. See, a person's character is not known just by whether they never fall. But even when they fall, how far do they fall? And what is their attitude after falling? The first concern is I want to conceal so that nobody knows I fell. Or is the first concern that, okay, I want to make sure that I make amends for whatever I did and I don't fall again. So, whenever there is a fall, now in this case we are talking about a fall means it is the abuse of power over here which Kartikeya Arjuna did. And Parshuram is punishing him from that. So today I'll be talking from the perspective of Kartikeya Arjuna and the action, the abuse of power. So the two sessions we have today and tomorrow, the Bhagavatam class. Today I'll talk from the perspective of a person who has done something wrong and what their attitude should be. And tomorrow I'll talk from the perspective of the authorities. What Parshuram did and what we can learn from that. Now we are not like Parshuram and we cannot go about indiscriminately or just going around a rampage. Recently, some of you may have seen the Narsimha movie. So, I was talking with the devotee who has made this movie. So he says, Parshuram, now this movie they made it in a very scripturally faithful way. But Parshuram movie, if you see, if somebody makes it, it's like the theme is of, have you heard this word, vigilante justice? Vigilante is where, somebody takes the law in their own hands and destroys criminals. So Parshuram is like that. He is a vigilante. He is deciding that all these people have to be destroyed. So we'll discuss about from Parshuram's perspective tomorrow. But at this particular point, let's try to, I talk about these two things, that even when we fall, are there boundaries and is there a regret? So our boundaries often come from our culture, they can come from our nature. That we all will get angry, but no matter how angry we get, some of us will say, I'm never going to use swear words. That's a boundary we have. I get angry, no matter how angry I get, I'm not going to hit somebody. I'm not going to use objects to hit somebody, whatever. All of us have certain boundaries. Now the difference between Devatas and Asuras is not that the Devatas don't have desires. Devatas also have desires. But the Devatas generally try to keep their desires within boundaries. When Ravan came to know that Sita was married, no, for a cultured person, okay, forget it, nothing more now. For him, that Sita was married was not a deal breaker. That was just an inconvenience. I have to find a way, just get her husband out of the way, then I can have her for myself. So for him, there was no respect for the boundaries of dharma. So in general, as we move ahead in our bhakti, it is not that overnight we can expect that our battles with anger or greed or jealousy or lust, they'll go from 1 to 0. One day I was angry, next day I am just free from anger. It doesn't work like that. But what should happen is that, see, our anger, when we get angry, is like, we may just have these, any of our urges, it could be anger, it could be jealousy, it could be lust. We have these urges, and we consider the graph of the urges with time. We have urges, and the urges have surges. Now, when the urges have surges, we may just feel powerless. I try, but I just can't do anything. And that may be true sometimes. But even in our lowest moments, even in our worst moments, we won't be as bad as we had been previously before coming to bhakti. So it's not that anger will go from 1 to 0, but even in my angriest moments, I may not do the things which I had done previously. So in one sense, purification that happens through bhakti. One characteristic of purification is, you could say, the impurity is eliminated. Now, we would like this to happen, but this is going to take time. The impurity eliminated is going to take time, but impurity, we could put it another way, is that even the impure indulgence, when the urge comes up and we succumb to it, the impure indulgence that happens, for that also the boundary gets elevated. The boundary gets elevated means that even if I get angry, I won't become that angry. That even if, like, whatever it is, say, if I feel jealous about someone, in the past, if I was jealous, maybe I would just spread a rumor about that person, and it could be like a vicious rumor that could destroy the reputation of that person. Now, I may feel jealous, and even if I speak something out of jealousy, it will be within certain boundaries. See, everywhere this principle of boundaries is there. Even in materialistic culture, like say in typical office scenario, there is office politics, and people try to do networking, and they try to, this person, maybe spread some misinformation about somebody, this person is like this person is like that. And they try to push themselves up like that. Now that's unfortunate, but that's true. But even in those contexts, there are some boundaries. Like, even if I am going to plant some rumors, it may be about that person. I'm not going to plant rumors about that person's family. I'm not going to plant rumors about that person's daughter, whatever. So there is a culture which brings certain level of boundaries. And for us, as we become purified, our boundaries get elevated. So to put it another way, the surges, they may be there, but the surges, they won't be that severe. They may be less frequent and less intense. So purification is not a 1-0 thing, it's sometimes a sliding scale. But when the scale slides backward also, it doesn't go down that bad. And that is an indication that we are on the path of purification. We are on the path of growth. Now, so let's put it another way. If we consider sliding scale, like say, I'm here. So this is where my normal behavior is. Now when I'm provoked, I may go till here. But even then, we will not go down particular level. So I hope this point is clear, that even if there is a provocation, there are certain boundaries which we will not cross. And that sense of the development of boundaries is a sign that we are getting purified. That we are getting purified indicates that our boundaries start rising upwards. Now, what if those boundaries are not rising up? I was talking with one devotee recently, and he said that, who we are when nobody is watching us, that is the real me. I told him, Prabhu, that's very harsh. When nobody is watching me, who I am, that is not the real me, that is the worst me. So when others are watching and who I am, that is also not the real me. That is the best me. So in full public view, that is the best me. In full private is the worst me quite often. And the real me is somewhere in between. So in general, if we consider, there is the best version of me. And generally, when we are in public, we try to put on our best face forward. And then there is the worst me. When nobody is seeing, or especially nobody is seeing who can hold me accountable. Sometimes that worst me come out against people who are powerless to do anything about me also. That's possible. So now the real me is somewhere in between. So the point I was making is that this range, the worst me, it will also not go very down. So the last point I'll make over here is, there are two visions of spiritual growth. And one aspect of, when I grow spiritually, this is based on 6.5 in the Bhagavad Gita, Uddhared atmanatmanam natmanam avasadayet. That when we elevate yourself with yourself, don't degrade yourself with yourself. So one way I can go spiritually is, we'll always have that, like the lower me and the higher me. It's called the higher self and the lower self. Now the healthy way to grow is, at the higher self goes up and the lower self also goes up. In my best moments, I am better than what I was previously. And in my worst moments also, I am better than what I was previously. So that is healthy growth. But sometimes the growth happens in the opposite way. The public me goes higher and the private me goes lower. This is an unhealthy kind of growth. This is where there is a lot of inner tension. Why? Because who we are at our worst and who we are at our best, if there is a huge tension between these two, this is where a person starts becoming hypocritical, a person starts to have to deceive others, a person has to deceive oneself. This is what Krishna talks about, karmendriyani sanyamya ya asate manasa smaran. Indriyarthan vimudhatma mithyachara sauchyate. Krishna says, who is a mithyachari? He talks about it in 3.6 in the Gita, that one who puts on a very different face in public from what they are in private. Now, there will always be a difference between our public and private face. We can't avoid that. And it's good that at least in public, there are some people in front of whom we try to bring out our better self. That's not hypocrisy. That is discipline. That is culture. But when there is no attempt to elevate the lower self also. So growth is what? In this conception, growth is that in public, I try to pretend to be better and better and better. And in private, I sink to worse and worse depths. So then, that is where it becomes very unsustainable. It becomes very tense. And if somebody is growing in this way, then they are bound to fall. Because it's like a rubber band, you can stretch it to a particular degree. But if you stretch it too much, see, if I have a rubber band and I'm stretching it, eventually I'm going to get tired of holding it, of pulling. And then normally what happens, when I let go, it's going to snap back to where I'm holding on and where I'm from, towards where I'm holding on, away from where I'm letting go. Now we could say I can let go from the lower side and slap back upwards. Now that can happen with a rubber band, but that doesn't happen in real life. Because holding up the upper self, rubber band does not have much weight. So holding up the upper part of the rubber band doesn't require much strength. But if you have like an exercise band, one part is lower, one part is upper. And if you start feeling exhausted, generally speaking, or you have some two dumbbells which are connected with each other, and then you're pulling them backward, one upward, one downward. So when we get exhausted, we won't let go of the lower part, because the lower part does not require that much strength. The upper part, holding it up, requires strength. So when we let go, one snaps back. So that's when sometimes when devotees who seem to be very sincere and dedicated, they sometimes just do such things which shock us. So was all this a show? Is this person just a hypocrite? Does this process even work? We can have all kinds of doubts. But it's not that the process doesn't work. It's just that they had a misunderstanding of how the process works. That means they thought that if I can just bury my lower side and act as if it's not exists, and make sure that nobody sees it when it comes out, that it will go away on its own. No, that does not mean it won't happen like that. No, it also has to be, the lower side also has to be elevated. Now that does not mean that the lower side we have to parade it in public. This is how terrible a person I am. No, that's not the point. But we have to be honest with ourselves. That we want to raise ourselves up, but the way we need to see how I'm raising myself up is not just how I am in my best moments, but also how I am in my worst moments. And that, how I am in my worst moments, should also be elevated. So that brings me to the point of the takeaway for us in the class. I already mentioned the takeaway. That is, that spiritual growth should make us more integrated, not more fragmented. Integrated means the lower self and the higher self, both they come closer to each other. That fragmented means the lower self and the higher self go much further away. And this is why Guhyam Akhyati Pruchati is required. That is, Guhyam Akhyati, among these 6 exchanges of love, that is, there are 2 exchanges we do too much, and 2 exchanges we do too little. Which is we do too much? Yeah, bhungte bhojayate chaiva, isn't it? Yeah, there are lots of exchange of prasad. That's wonderful. But the dati pratigranate, yeah, sometimes we give gifts. But sharing our heart, we need to have some close friends with whom we can be vulnerable. That, okay, these are the challenges I am facing. And how do we have to be very careful how we find that friend. And it could be a spiritual master, it could be a spiritual guide, it could be somebody who's our equal. But the challenges that we are facing, if we have somebody with whom we can share them, and that person needs to be neither too harsh nor too lenient. It depends on our disposition. Now, I remember I started by saying that, is somebody regretting the wrong, or is they regretting that they got caught because of the wrong? So what happens is, whenever there is a lapse, so ideally speaking, the kind of friend we need is, if after the lapse, we are feeling complacent, then at that time, that person needs to be hard on us. Like sometimes in India, we have the phrase, chalta hai. Okay, it's no big deal. It happens. No, it should not be happening. We have to do something to prevent it from happening. So if we are complacent, then that person needs to be hard. You have to get your act together. You cannot let this go on. But on the other hand, if we are already feeling repentant, we are already feeling very bad and morose, at that time, the person needs to be gentle with us. If somebody is already very down, how did such a thing happen? I'm so fallen. I think I cannot practice bhakti. Yeah, that's true. You are not worth practicing bhakti. That will drive the person away. We don't want to do that. So overall, that Krishna is our Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam. Srila Prabhupada would say, your ever well-wisher. Prabhupada was a well-wisher like that, as is Krishna. And if we can have a friend like that, even 1 or 2 friends like that, even one like that, that's wonderful. If we don't have, then we try to have. But if we don't have, then Shastra. We look at Shastra in an honest way. Shastra can also act as a mirror, which helps us to look at ourselves and thereby elevate ourselves. So I'll summarize what I discussed today. I talked about abuse and lapse. Like when abuses and lapses, that when there is when anarthas come up in our life, we may do terrible things which hurt others, or we may do terrible things which hurt ourselves. So we talked about the acronym. What was the acronym? Chit. So C was the context. So in the context, I discussed how that this is just before the 10th canto, we have the 9th canto. And the 10th canto is going to be a revelation of the spiritual world. So before that, the 9th canto is giving us a revelation of the material world. The material world in all its brazen reality, it's all its brutal reality. So how big tribulations can befall someone, or temptations can come upon someone. Tribulations are great pain can come upon someone, and small temptations can also drive a person crazy. So now we are discussing specifically the pastime of Parashuram and Kartavira Arjuna. But the implication over here is that there is the Kshatriya Brahmana dynamic. That is a consistent theme in the Bhagavatam. So there's Parikshit Maharaj and there is Shringi. Now the similar story is here, that is of Kartavira Arjuna and Parshuram or Jamadagni, that whole thing. So now what has happened over here? That Kartavira Arjuna has terribly abused his power. That is, normal people have fear of law, but here what has happened? This law has fear. This is a very terrible situation to be in. That's why there has to be a very strong action. So in general, for us, that we will all have impurities, but impurity we cannot, we can try to eliminate, but if we cannot eliminate, we try to elevate even our worst moments. Elevate our lowest. That will be a sign of purity also. In my worst moments, how far do I go down? So that sense of boundaries is important. And then in the takeaway, I discussed two main things. One is spiritual growth. It should be that my higher self and lower self both go upwards. Not that my higher self goes upward and the lower self goes lower. That this is desirable, this is not desirable. And that is happening, then we need to be able to confide with someone. We need a confidant, we need a close friend, somebody with whom we can share our heart. And that person should be able to, that when we have lapses, well, we are not confident about our lapses. That's not the point over here. So when we have a lapse, if we are complacent, let me see if we can. If we are complacent, then they need to be hard on us. If we are ourselves repentant, then they can be gentle on us. And in that way, we will eventually come to a balanced state of spiritual growth, where from wherever we are, we can be growing spiritually. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for a nice class. So, my question is, you've shown us how the higher boundary and the lower boundary, we need to elevate both of them. But what is the process? One of the processes we confide with devotee. But again, sometimes it happens that there are too many services. Because you are doing in the services, your higher boundary keeps on going up, but the lower boundary does not change, because you don't have to have time to work on that. So what is the process where you can set your boundaries, or what changes over a period of time which can elevate your boundary so that you don't fall to that lower level?
So our services will lead to our higher self getting elevated automatically. Our profile may improve, our responsibilities may rise. That is true. So it also depends on when we get a bigger role, bigger position, how we act in that position. If we act as if I'm a pure devotee, then it will go towards being hypocritical. But if we are candid, that I am also a struggling sadhaka, I also am fighting the same war. These are the weapons which have helped me, but I still have to fight. Sometimes I am careless with the weapons, and sometimes I may also get wounded. So if, like there are two ways somebody can be a leader. A leader can be one above the others, or the leader can be one among the others. Now we can say obviously a leader is one above the others, but it's not that simple. That yes, there are some roles in which the leader has to give instructions, and that's when the leader is at a higher position. But there should also be some areas where the leader comes down and acts like one among the others. So if there are some services by which we can, like Krishna himself, when he came to the Rajasuya Yagya, he took the service of washing the feet of all the guests. And it was not just a show of humility. Some people may think that, but it is an expression of humility. So, are we one among others or one above the others? So, in general, we don't put ourselves above the others internally. That is the whole idea of servant leadership. That is a service, I may be in this position, but at my core, I am here for service. So if we have that mood, then that's how we are putting as a one among the others. And we all have to be aware of our own weaknesses. So somebody who tends to be short-tempered. As I said, we can't be too hard on ourselves. The anarthas take time to go. So now, if we know that we have particular anarthas, then we should not take services that will put us in provocative situations, especially associated with that anartha. If I tend to be short-tempered, then maybe, just maybe, I should not be in charge of devotee care. Isn't it? If I have a weakness for food, then maybe I should not appoint myself as Mahaprasadam in charge. Isn't it? So, in one sense, that was the mistake of Duryodhan. See, Duryodhan, he naturally had envy towards the Pandavas. And, it's at a human level, it's understandable. They were his peers, cousins, but now they had got a fabulous kingdom. They had got this Maya Sabha, and they had performed the Rajasuya Yagya. Everything that he would have wanted to do, they had done that. So the envy is understandable. But what really ruined him was not the envy. When everybody left, he decided to stay on. He said, I want to see the Maya Sabha even more. Well, he did not see the Maya Sabha, he saw only Maya over there. Isn't it? So that was a very provocative situation for him. So what happened was disastrous. But the thing is, we have to be aware of our vulnerabilities and our own weaknesses. And then we have to take measures to protect ourselves. So if we do that, even if the lower self is there, the lower self might be there, but the lower self, how many opportunities are there for the lower self to express itself, to manifest? If we have arranged our life in such a way, we are trying to purify ourselves, but we are letting a lot of opportunities for that lower self to come out, then that is dangerous. So each one of us has to see that and make sure that we protect ourselves from those. So purification will work in its own way, but while it is working, we don't want to fuel the lower self. There are two things with respect to the lower self, how it becomes stronger. The two can seem similar, but there's a slight difference. The lower self, one is it can be fueled. Fueled means the internal desire starts becoming more and more stronger. So, internally, the fueling happens because maybe we contemplate on something. Fueling is more associated with the jnanendriyas. What we perceive, based on that, the fueling happens. The second is they are facilitated. Facilitated means that is more associated with the karmendriyas. That when I want to indulge, if it's easy for me to indulge. So ideally we should be avoiding both fueling and facilitating. Shama and Dhamma, Krishna says are the characters of Brahmana. Shama is more associated with the jnanendriyas. That peace of mind. That means don't contemplate, don't dwell on external thing that will agitate. A Brahmana tries to keep oneself peaceful, that is Shama. Now Dhamma is sense control. That means even if the mind is agitated, I don't act on that agitation. So that is where we don't facilitate our anarthas. So fueling is where we have lots of opportunities to contemplate on anarthas. Facilitating is where we make it easier for one to indulge in the anarthas. So that way we try to avoid fueling and facilitating. And that's one way to protect ourselves. Okay? Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Mataji. Where's the mic over? Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for the nice class. Prabhu, you were talking about tolerating and adjusting. And I was thinking about the case of King Chitraketu. When Parvati Devi cursed him to become a demon, he just took it peacefully. And Parvati Devi didn't know the whole reason why he was laughing. And also for Vijara, he didn't retaliate back when Duryodhan cursed him out of the palace. So how do we know when do we tolerate and when do we retaliate?
Okay. I'm just trying to understand. When did I talk about tolerating and adjusting in today's class? You said I talked about tolerating and adjusting. I'm trying to see which point of my class is connected with this question. Did I mention anything about tolerating and adjusting today?
Yes, I think.
When was that? Okay, anyway, I don't know. Either your memory is bad or my memory is bad. If my memory is bad, that is far worse because I spoke and I forgot. But I don't think I talked about tolerance. Maybe you could say that keeping our anger within boundaries is like tolerance. So I don't think I used the word tolerating and adjusting today. But anyway, it's a good question. It will take me about 1 hour to answer this. But I'll try to answer it as shortly as I can. See, 2.14 in the Bhagavad Gita is about tolerance. Tams titikshasva bharata. But what to tolerate? Is Krishna telling Arjuna tolerate the Kauravas' atrocities? Oh, they dishonored Draupadi, they did so many terrible things. You say tolerate it all. Is that what he's saying? No, that is not to tolerate it. What is tolerate? Tolerate that you have to fight Bhishma. That Bhishma is in the opposite side. It's very painful for you to fight against him, but you fight. So what to tolerate and what not to tolerate? That is something which is very important to understand. And that's why before this is Dehinosmin Yathade. So that is basically giving us intelligence. So intelligence means to know what are the big things in our life and to know what are the small things in our life. Prabhupada says in the 10th chapter purport, he says, intelligence means to see things in their proper perspective. So once we know something is a big thing and something is a small thing, so then we can tolerate. And the result of tolerance is what? Yamhina vyathayantyete purusham purusharshabha samadukha sukham dhuram somrutattvaya kalpate. The result of tolerance is transcendence. We can rise above the situation. So that is the sequence. First we need intelligence to know what is a big thing and what is a small thing. And if we consider from that perspective, then when we have to tolerate, it is tolerance should be to keep small things small. tolerance should not mean that we let big things become small. Or rather, tolerance should ensure that small things don't become big. But tolerance shouldn't mean that big things become small. Isn't it? So the idea is, what is tolerance? When you talk about tolerance, two ways tolerance can go wrong. One is the more common for us, we let small things become big. And that becomes intolerance, as we say. That is unhealthy. People get provoked over small things. But the other extreme is when we make big things small. Some things are serious problems and they need to be fixed. So if we let big things become small, that is not intolerance, that is impotence. That is powerlessness, that can be irresponsibility. Say if somebody is cooking for the deities and they see that some devotee is before the food is offered to the deities, that devotee is eating the food before only. Now, I should be tolerant. Now, we don't have to publicly scream at that devotee and shame that devotee. But that's a big thing over there, isn't it? We have food that is offered to the deities. There's some standards that have to be followed. So tolerance should not lead to big things becoming small. So tolerance, what should happen is, by it, we keep small things small so that we can keep big things big. That's why sometimes we need to have our buddhi with us, intelligence, to know what is a big thing, what is a small thing. So now, in that particular case of Chitraketu, now he decided that Parvati is a great person and I don't want to retaliate against her. So he decided to tolerate, and that's great. He tolerated it. But is that the only way to function all the time? No, Parshuram did not tolerate when Kartavira, Arjuna misused power. Because he considered, the difference is that in that particular case, what Parvati had done was only to him. And he had already retired as a king. He had already entrusted his kingdom. So he said, this is hurting me only, I'll tolerate. But what Jamadagni, what Kartavira Arjuna was doing, if he can get away by killing one sage, he can do it to so many others afterwards. So that action was likely to affect many more people. So it's a big thing. He said, we cannot, it has to be not tolerated, but it has to be countered. It has to be stopped. Okay? Thank you. Yes, Mataji?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. When you were talking, just on your previous point, you were talking about the higher self and your lower self and the process of evolution as an individual to evolve and to reflect so that we are genuinely growing by being our genuine self. But I find sometimes through the practice of bhakti, there are standards that we aspire to be, and to be able to achieve that, we have to first understand who we are. We have to understand where we're at. But it's hard to take that step back and just accept that this is where I'm at, because through that process of evolution, you're trying to be better. You're trying to bring your lower self and higher self up, but sometimes it really plays with your mind, because you're trying to get where you want to be, but you also have to accept that this is where I am, and it's okay to be where I am. I feel there's always at some point you get to that point where you're battling between the two.
Yeah. So see, one devotee was telling me once that he was having some difficulty with another devotee, and he said, if I could just understand his mind, I could just understand, get a peek into his mind, I would be able to understand this person. I really want to have a good relationship with this person. If only I could see his mind, then I would be able to connect much better. I told him that, we can't see into each other's minds, and that is the only reason relationships survive. Because, see, inside us, lots of thoughts and desires and emotions come up, which are quite uncomplimentary, quite uncharitable. You can say sometimes uncivilized also. But the fact is, nature has given us the capacity as human beings for a certain level of self-control. So a lot of things pop up inside us. So Chakravarti Pad used the example that sometimes we may be living in a city. He talks about this in the context of Navdware Pure Dehi. We are a city of 9 gates. So he says sometimes in the city we are living, there might be brutal criminals living in that city. And when we are sitting, we might see a brutal criminal passing by also. So now, just because that brutal criminal is passing by, doesn't mean we have to open the door for that person to come in and rob us. Or doesn't mean we have to join that person in their robbery. So like that, he says that sometimes if we consider our inner world to be like a city, in that also terrible thoughts may come in. Something which will be shockingly not just different from, but opposite to the values that we stand for. But if we, what is that, 14.19 and 20? Na kartrutva na karmani lokasya sujati prabhu. That, actually that's third, 5th chapter. But that same thing that, in our inner world, we are not always the doers. That some things just pop up because of the modes. So that understanding is very helpful. So just because some terrible thoughts have come up within us, that does not mean that's the real me. So the real me or the authentic me, it is actually very difficult to assess that also. Is it that these dark, deadly thoughts that are coming me, that is the real me? Or these noble, selfless thoughts that are coming, the real me? Well, it depends. It's not so easy to say. So don't identify ourselves with our worst thoughts. And that's the first thing I would say. Second is, just let them come, they will come. Prakasham cha pravrittim cha moham eva cha pandava na dveshti sampravrittani na nivrittani kankshati. Krishna says, when they come, don't resent them. When they go, don't crave after them. They'll just come, they will stay, and they will go. It's 14, 21, 20, 23. Then, after that, another aspect is that when we talk about being expected to be at a particular level, so there will be a mismatch. As I said, there will be not a mismatch, a distance between who we are expected to be and who we are. And that will be there for everyone in life. But the test for us is that, like I said, when our lower self comes out, if it comes out, how much is that public profile that we have fueling or facilitating our lower self? That means by putting on that profile, now I'm not saying that in a hypocritical sense, that see, sometimes the social expectation can also be a good thing. It can inspire us to become the best version of ourselves. Now sometimes it can become a crushing burden if the distance is too much. But the point is that social expectation can inspire us to become better. Then that is a good thing. We all need some people in our lives who have the faith that we can be better than what we are right now. Probably the greatest loss, the greatest relational loss for a person is that we lose people who have faith that we can be better than what we are. Then we may say, we may still have friends, but it's like, I am with my friends going to hell. It's like that. I want friends who raise me upwards, not take me downward. So that is a great loss. So now we may say, oh, but this person has this faith in me, but I am not like this. I am like this. Yeah, that is true. Nobody knows us completely. But still, if that social expectation, relational expectation is inspiring us to become a better version of ourselves, that is a good thing. And if that higher profile that we are getting, that higher service we are getting, if that is not fueling or facilitating our lower self, then the danger there is not so much. See, the danger can be two-way. Like we can harm ourselves and we can harm others. Now we want to avoid both, ideally speaking. But it's like, but ideally speaking, it should be that if I am playing in a particular role, it's like I am elevating myself. Myself, and I am elevating others. Or, like, I am degrading myself. Or I am degrading. Degrading means I am harming, hurting, whatever. Because elevating could be used, benefiting, we could use the word for it. And harming. So, if we consider 4 quadrants in this way, I'm harming others. So, if we consider 4 quadrants, ideally speaking, if we start from the right bottom, we would like to be in the 4th quadrant. Where we are in a role where we are elevating ourselves. Bharat bhumite hoila manushya janma jar. Janma sarthak kari karapara upkar. We are elevating ourselves and we are elevating others. That's the best situation to be in. But if we can't be in the 4th, now we could say 4th is the best. Second best is where? 3 is, well, none of the others are good in one sense. But relatively speaking, that if we are in a position, so it's like you could be, I could be way over here somewhere, I could be way over here somewhere, I could be here somewhere. That means that role gives me the opportunity to degrade myself. It could be, but I'm not degrading myself too much. But I'm actually benefiting others a lot. So now in this also, now I could be somewhere here. I'm doing a lot for elevating others, doing very little for elevating myself. I'm doing a lot for elevating myself, I'm doing little for elevating others. There are spectrums. There are ranges in that. So ideally speaking, it's best to be in the 4th quadrant, but if we are not, then it shouldn't be that in trying to benefit others, we are hurting ourselves, or we are hurting others and benefiting ourselves. So each one of us has to find out if we feel a profile is a bit too much for me at this particular point. Then we may say, I'm not really, I don't think I'm suited for this service. Talk with some senior devotee and we may decide, I don't think I can do this service right now. But generally, the point of humility, for us, humility should not become a disqualification for service. Because I am humble, I think I am disqualified for this service. See, that is a very self-centered vision. What do you mean self-centered vision? Say, if I have good singing ability, I don't have that. But if I have good, suppose somebody has good singing ability, and they think if I sing, others will praise me and I'll become proud. Therefore, I'll not sing. But then what is happening over there? We are thinking that the singing ability is mine and I won't use it. But then what will happen? We don't want to be glorified, but what happens? Somebody else sings, they are glorified, and we feel jealous of them. Like somebody else praises, this person sings so nicely. Have you seen how much prasad he eats? We'll find some subtle way to put them down. So we try to avoid pride in us, but then we end up with envy in others, envy towards others. So the way is not so much that, I won't take up a responsibility, I won't express an ability. It is that we try to make it more Krishna-centered. That is Krishna, I'm not qualified for this, but still I have given this opportunity. Please protect me. Please empower me. And if I'm able to play this role, let me remember that it is because of your mercy. It is not because of my purity. So when we so humility should lead to us increased feeling of dependence on Krishna. It's very important. I'll conclude with this. Humility should not lead us to a feeling that I am disqualified. It should not increase our feeling of disqualification so much that we just give up. See, in bhakti, we are always unqualified, but we are never disqualified. Unqualified is I don't have the qualification. Disqualified means I'm not allowed to participate only. So bhakti should not, now others, Krishna never makes us disqualified, but we ourselves may think I'm disqualified. So bhakti should not lead us to feeling of disqualification. It should lead to a feeling of dependence on Krishna. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has songs like Amara Jivan Sada Pape Rata. Those kind of songs are there, but at the end, what is it? He more fervently surrenders to Krishna. He says, Krishna, you are my only hope. Because I have all these impurities, therefore you are my only hope. He doesn't think because of all these impurities, even you can't help me. That's not like that. Okay? Thank you. Okay, so there's a question here somewhere. It's a short question. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So, Grantraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. So tomorrow we'll discuss about Parshuram, and from the authority's perspective, how power is to be used if somebody has done something wrong.